Welcome to the NatureWall installation video. In this video, we run through the basic installation steps for the NatureWall internal wall insulation system. So in this video, we're going to start with a bare wall. The first thing to do is to run the Ampicol Compromax tape along the perimeter. And this seals between the edges of the insulation and the surrounding surfaces. Make sure it's nice and airtight and prevents any moisture movement. So run the tape along the floor and up the sides before you start installing any insulation. First thing to do on this particular instance is to install the Multipore boards. These prevent any issues with moisture should there be high moisture levels along the bottom of the wall. So mix up the adhesive in a bucket, just whisk it up as you would any other adhesive, and apply it to the back of the board. Using a notch trowel, spread out the adhesive and fully coat the back of the board to make sure you've got full contact with the wall and there are no air gaps behind it. Push the board slightly off of where you want to fit it and then slide it 5 to 10 mil one way or the other. And doing this removes any air gaps behind the boards and ensures good contact with the wall. So the next step is to install the rest of the boards all the way along the bottom edge, like so. If the wall is bare, you will need to put a leveling plaster on it, and we generally recommend the Beton Fine to do so. If the wall is already plastered, then you can leave out this step. Next, take your wood fibre boards and remove the T&G profile from the bottom edge and the side so that when you push the board into place, you've got full contact with the surfaces. Drill holes for the fixings, and using an 8mm SDS drill is the easiest way to do this. We typically use the Fisher-Thermos fixings to do this. They need at least 40mm penetration into the masonry, so just make sure they're long enough to do that. Push them into place and gently tap them in. You don't need to tap them in hard. You don't want them too tightly fitted to the wall at this point until you've got all the adjacent boards in. Once all the rest of the boards in, you can tighten them up with a screwdriver, a drill driver, and make sure it's well clamped to the wall. Next, take your reveal boards and cut them to the appropriate size. You run the Ampicol Compromax tape around the perimeter of the window, and this ensures a good seal between the edge of the reveal board and the window. And once the boards are cut to size, you can apply the adhesives to the back. Use the MC55 where the board is going to be bonded to masonry, and use the UD special adhesive where it's going to bond to the edge of the wood fibre boards on the wall. Do the same within the reveal and then push the two together, pushing the reveal board firmly up against the Ampicol Compromax tape running around the window. Put the rest of the reveal boards in and let the glue set. Run the Ampicol DT tape up and down the surfaces of the wood fibre boards before you put your membrane in, and then roll the membrane out like so. The Ampicol Fenax 4060 is used along the entire perimeter of the membrane to ensure a good seal and ensure there's no air movement behind the membrane. Make sure you've got a good 100mm overlap between each row of membrane, and then tape all the laps with the Ampicol Int tape. For any openings, it's easier to cut them out afterwards. You can always reuse the section of membrane that you cut out if you cut it out neatly. Take the Ampicol Fenax 1263 tape, run that around the external perimeter of the window, peel off the backing off the 12mm section and push that against the surface of the window. In the corners, pinch the membrane to make a really good airtight seal. Next, use sections of the Fenax 4060 tape to seal the corners. And once they're in place, you run the 4060 tape around the entire perimeter of the window, like so. In this instance, we're using the reveal boards as part of our airtightness layer, and the reveal boards generally are quite airtight, so this is okay. Next, we address the partition wall, and we use the 20mm reveal boards again and the Baumit MC55 as an adhesive to bond them to the surface of the wall. So cut the reveal boards to the appropriate width, typically at least 500mm, but they can be wider if necessary. Apply the MC55 to the back of the board and comb it with a notch trowel again. The troweling with the notch trowel is quite important because the teeth force the render into the surface of the board, and so you get really good contact with the back of the board. So that is an important step. Shouldn't just be done with a steel trowel. So with those reveal boards in place, the battens can be fixed to the walls. And typically you use either an 8 or a 10mm SDS drill to drill through the battens, and you're drilling all the way through the battens, through the insulation and into the masonry behind. Typically you want 50 to 60mm penetration into the masonry to ensure that you get a good fixing with the frame fixings that will eventually hold the battens in place. Use the Fisher Duo Expand fixings and push them into the holes that have been drilled. These can be gently tapped in with a hammer, but are screw fixings which require a drill driver to tighten them up. Don't over tighten them so that the battens squash into the surface of the wood fibre, because this will make installing the flexible insulation between the battens difficult and also push out from the wall, which means that your plasterboard is likely to bow. Frame out around the window so that you've got a complete frame around it, like so, and fix the battens at roughly 600mm centres. The services are installed into the service zone in conduit and fixed to the side of the battens. Make sure you don't damage the membrane in this process, and only fixed to the side of the battens, nothing to the surface of the membranes. The next step is to install the flexible insulation between the battens. And this is simply a case of pressing it in between. If you do need to cut it about 10 to 15mm wider than the gap you're filling before you push it into place. Remember to cut out for any back boxes where your surfaces are, and then you can install the plasterboard. The window reveal plasterboard is fixed in place with a construction adhesive and then fixings around the perimeter of the window. Next, install the sill, and then you're ready to cut out for back boxes. Use a multi-tool to carefully cut through the plasterboard, being careful not to push the tool in too far and cut into the membrane. If you do make any cuts into the membrane, use some air tightness tape to seal any holes. Pull the surfaces through and then pop your plasterboard back box in place. Once that's tightened up and ready to go, you can apply your surface plaster and finish the wall.